Welcome to the creative community. I'm your host, David Starkey, and my guest this time is artist Hugh Margerum. Hugh, welcome. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was about 15 years ago, I think, when we last did
wow.
this.
And I was just saying, you look as good or better than
I probably had all gray hair back then, so
yeah, you did,
I got started early on that.
Well, we're going to look at some of your newer work. We're going to look at some work that I think people who know your stuff will be kind of familiar with stylistically, and then you're going to kind of take us through an adventure at the end of the show for people to really hold on to and look forward to, of a painting. Not every step, but just step by step, and this thing changes radically. So viewers, hold on to your hats, because it's going to be a wild ride. But for folks who don't know you, and in Santa Barbara, that's probably about 5 people. Hugh, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to become a painter.
Yeah, well, I've basically always been a painter, and I didn't think of myself as an artist until I got into college and university, and I started taking art classes and just doing that more and more. But as a kid, I was always building models and even paint by numbers and creative stuff. And then when I got into high school, in junior high school, I took a lot of drafting classes.
Oh, interesting.
That was my shop class. And I also took wood shop and some of the other classes, which, by the way, I think is a travesty that they don't really have those in schools anymore, I don't think. But drafting gave me a great knowledge of how to depict things in space and do, perspective and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
really important for an artist.
And photography, I mean, in high school, I took photography. And that was one of the few classes that I was excited about in all of high school. But I had a great teacher, and again, especially back then in the early 70s, photography wasn't as known as an art form as it is now. And it was more of a technical thing to do. But I got really turned on to that, and I'd go out early mornings and just shoot a bunch of photographs. But it also taught me about, tone and composition and all that kind of stuff. The thing I didn't really like about it is you didn't get immediate results.
Back then.
Well, yeah, back then, yeah, exactly. Nowadays you just delete.
Right.
But so you had to go in the dark room and develop the film and then enlarge the negatives and all that. And so you finally got the finished product, then you could manipulate it.
Whereas with a painting, it's appearing right before your eyes.
Yeah, and I did, I took ceramics a little bit. Ceramics was kind of the same way. You made something, you had to fire it and then glaze it, and you didn't see it. But painting, it was like immediate results.
Right.
You put something on the canvas, and there it is.
Yeah.
You wipe it off.
It's gone.
That's it. So that's, I think, when I discovered actually oil painting. I thought, someone's got to do this.
You grew up in Los Angeles, am I remember that correctly?
Born in LA. Went to school up in Humboldt State University, up in the Redwoods, and then came to Santa Barbara in 1978. So I've been here most of my life.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a look here at. This is your studio, I assume.
Yeah. So I wanted to show a photograph of the studio just to see the working space, and also my cute dog is in there too. It's because a lot of times you look at these slides and you don't really see a tiny slide.
Right. You don't know how.
It could be a huge painting or a tiny thing. You have no idea. So that kind of gives you an idea.
So that shows
of the scale of things.
The first things we're going to look at are pretty small, and we'll see them in person. And the paintings on the left are pretty darn big.
Yeah, they're pretty big. They're sort of like human size, like 6 feet by 5 feet, approximately. So this is part. Again, I wanted to show them on the wall so you can see the size of these. It's always been kind of easy for me to work larger with big gestures and mixing paint and wiping off stuff and going back and forth. It's kind of this battleground in a way.
Right.
But I recently discovered this new material called a Yupo.
Yupo.
Yeah, Y-U-P-O, and it's a brand name for artificial paper.
Okay.
It's a polypropylene, I think it is.
And what's it normally used for?
Art. Yeah, okay. It's another alternative to work on.
Okay.
So it's and so I started doing this. So actually, here's a piece of Yupo right here, and this is a work that I painted black, and then I used a Dremel kind of etching tool and went into it and scraped it off. But I found with this stuff I can do, you know, colored acrylic ink on it on top, or I can do, this is black ink, and then another one where I've removed it with a tool. And so
it's a tough paper, right? I mean,
super
you
tough.
can take an etching tool
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
not all ripped up.
That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
You can sand it down, you can scrape it, you can scratch into it. So with these, I've been really experimental in doing all different types of things to get the end result.
What was the decision to make them so small?
I think I just had the piece
That's what
in
you
my studio. And also, you know, they don't take up any room, for one thing. I have a storage unit in my studio, which is getting pretty full of large paintings too. But so once I started doing these, and I thought, and also I've been in a few shows with these, and people just bought them.
I was going to say,
away.
it seems like something you could sell quite a few.
Yeah. No, they're more purchasable
than an enormous painting. Yeah.
So, so there's another. There's a bunch of them laid out, and then I've been framing them in these simple white frames too. So.
So do you want to talk about each piece, or should we just go through?
We can just go through them. I mean, every one of these, you know, has different. So that one has a kind of a metallic marker paint on it.
Okay.
They're hard to see in the slides sometimes because they're some of them are reflective. And that was, I think, oil paint that I went in and scraped out like the little sort of a star pattern.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks like the beginning of the cosmos.
Yeah, so they are kind of, they have, I titled them series, in a series. Some of them are called the Tangle series, which looks like a bunch of, you know, briar patch or something almost, and it's kind of botanical. Others are more astronomy kind of oriented, and then there's so they're
it's interesting to me because so they are kind of evoking the natural world or things beyond our ken, you know, but you're doing it with this, you know, with this new kind of, or this paper with the etching tools and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it can actually be kind of violent in a way, the way I'm making them, but they create sort of these more otherworldly kind of peaceful things, I would hope.
Yeah.
And it's also sort of like, some of them are more like neurons, you know, like synapses going in the brain. So it could be very like micro as well as very macro.
Yeah, right, yeah. Looking at these things, they do look really, really interesting. You know, this is not a commercial show, Hugh, but if somebody was like really keen to buy one of these or to look at them up close, how would they do that?
Come by my studio, or I'm looking. Like I say, I've had some of these in group shows around town, but I'm really looking for a place that I could show them all at once.
Okay.
Because I probably have about 100 of them.
Oh wow.
You just got to find the right venue for that.
You're doing some cool things with color, especially in this one.
I mean, a couple of the things that happened with these is I've had a hard time in the past just working with black and white, and so some of these are just very stark black and white images. But then also I've used color with various mediums, you know, like acrylic ink, oil paint. This one was in the Small Images show at City College recently, and that sold. I had 2 pieces in there. They both sold out of that show.
Yeah, it was a great annual event over there.
And some of them are, like this one is more almost nature, almost like you're looking up through branches into the sky.
Yeah, I saw fireworks too there
in a forest. Bit. Yeah, so they're abstract, but they're based on experiences.
It's almost like a little Paul Klee from. I don't know. I look over my shoulder. Not quite. That's great.
Yeah,
so I mean it's a new thing. I mean, as we get into our 60s, you know, you're always trying to push yourself so you're not just relying on the things that.
And it's cool to discover something new, and also it's like a big painting. You know, I have to get out all the paints and get it all set up and the brushes and clean the brushes and all that. So these are little. I just have them on my work table. And I have several going at once, and I can just,
When you need to stop for one, you go over to the next one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'll leave one halfway done and come back to it and scrape away at it some more, or add some more ink to it.
Curious, as a working artist, what's your typical day like? And what are you doing?
It depends. I've actually retired from my day job, day jobs. I was working with Margerum Wine Company.
Right.
And when the pandemic hit, we were scaling everything back at the winery and the tasting room. Right. And so I volunteered, like, why don't I just get laid off for a while, see what happens? Right. We didn't know what was going to happen then. And then I decided, well, hey, I think I can just, retire.
Right.
And
cool.
so that's been great.
Yeah.
I was also, I don't know if you know this, some people do know this, I did a branding campaign for the Presidio neighborhood. Oh, wow. I created a website, map, brochure, online map, and got all the historical entities, theaters, restaurants, bars, tasting rooms, shops, all to kind of band together to have a
neighborhood,
a destination.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I did not know that.
But I just sold that project to the Trust for Historic Preservation, so they're taking that over. So I'm kind of like divesting myself of the
things that are non-art
all
related?
This external stuff. So I'm more focused on art, but I don't really have a regular schedule. I go into my studio every day, which was some advice I got from a painter called Henri Matisse.
Show up.
Yeah, that's what he said. He goes, his discipline was, I don't have to work every day, but I have to go into my studio every day. Yeah. And once you're in there, then you find a little corner, and I'm going to do a little on this, and one thing leads to another. And so some days are more productive than others.
I found that as a writer too, that's very, if you show up at the typewriter or the computer, you do stuff. Well, let's move on to this next section here. We got about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure that we get to the final part. But this is, I assume, pretty big piece.
Yeah, that's about 5.5 feet tall. So it's sort of like human-sized. And these are, I've always been an abstract painter.
Right.
When I started off, I was painting abstractly, except for a brief period where I felt like I had to know a little bit more about how to paint realistic things, but it wasn't where I was.
It wasn't you, yeah.
No, it wasn't really me. And so I've always done abstract paintings. And these, the way I work is very intuitively also. And so I just start making a mark on the canvas, and then one thing leads to another, and then I don't like that section, I wipe it off, the worst part is, there's a section that I really love, and I work all around that to try to preserve it, and then I finally go, God.
You finally got to get rid of it.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Because it doesn't work for the rest of the painting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, that would be similar to, a film director, where you shoot an incredibly beautiful scene with some actors who are giving their all. It doesn't work for the movie, and as they say, it ends up on the cutting room floor. So it's sad to see it go, but it didn't serve the purpose.
Kill your darlings, as they say in the writing thing. Sometimes you have to do that to sacrifice for the greater good.
This is another a mid-sized painting. Again, I was sort of challenging myself to work just mostly in black and white.
This is a little bit different.
Yeah, this is different. This is a canvas that I had around for a long time, and I started just reworking it a bit. And it's another kind of weird.
I like how you've given some space around the main objects.
Yeah, and there's these kind of, maybe almost alien forms in there of some kind of different planet or something like that. And,
and these are, I know you've done these over the years, and we don't have the titles here. If you do remember a title, you want to throw it out, by all means.
Yeah, I do title them, and some of those earlier series were all named after streets in the neighborhood where I grew up.
Ah, okay.
So unfortunately, I don't exactly remember which one goes to which one, but I can tell you, so one of them is called Leonora.
Okay.
And one's called Calatrana.
Ah, beautiful street names.
Yeah, they're beautiful names. And it was actually a subdivision in Woodland Hills where the developer probably just named them after his kids or made them up, whatever. Yeah. But I like to have a title on a piece rather than just say
abstraction and untitled number 72
exactly.
Or whatever,
so and so yeah, this one is called rootstock, and so because I been in the wine business for years, you know, and grapes grow on rootstock, and then they're grafted, and so this seemed a little bit like it related to that somehow, but not my intention when I started off. I never.
Well, let's take a quick wine pause here, because the Margerum wine, people know, as one of the...
Yeah, that's my brother's winery.
Your brother's winery?
Yeah, we were in the food and wine business for many years. We owned a wine cask restaurant, and so we both got really great knowledge of wine. It was more his passion. I was always doing my art at the same time. And then he started making wine, and around, I think the first vintage was 2001. Okay. And then that has grown and grown and grown, and the wines are fantastic.
And your brother is Doug, right?
Yeah, Doug Margerum.
So I got to tell you a quick anecdote for the cameras. You gave me a Margerum shirt one time when I was visiting you.
Oh, really?
And I was wearing it, and a realtor came to our house, and he said, "Hey," and he couldn't remember my name. I was like, "I'm Dave." He's like, "Hey, Dave Margerum." And he was sure I was your brother, and that he was going to make a big sale because I was this fancy wine baron.
There are some similarities. You're both about the same height.
Anyway, I always wanted to tell you that story. So I have now beautiful colors here.
Yeah, so this is more of a like medium-sized, medium-large painting. It's probably about 5 feet across. I do remember the name of this one. It's called Zolora, which is a made-up word. It's called XO. L-O-R-A. And someone sent me a message one time, and somehow the spell check changed something to Zolora. They were trying to say colors. Right. And I don't know if maybe Zolora really is a word. But I said, I'm going to use that for a painting title sometime.
So. That's a gift you don't want to give away.
Yeah, and so this is the most recent painting I've done. Okay. So this is a large painting, and so this is a finished product. But I thought it might be interesting. This is what you were talking about, or maybe not. But it's so, you know, a lot of times people think, well, yeah, it's pretty easy to do abstract painting and just do it.
Whatever.
Put it on. It doesn't matter. But I probably have about 10 slides of this work in progress. Yeah, and
so, let's because we have about 10 minutes left, and we don't want to give a minute to each slide. But you know, I'm interested. Take your time as we go through this. So we're gonna.
Sure. So the title of this piece is called Verano.
Verano,
which means summer in Spanish. And so yeah, I just finished it in these really hot days we're having. I'm like just wearing shorts in my studio and painting away.
And then this is the opening.
Right. So this is day one of that painting, and I've heard artists say, you know, the hardest thing about making a painting is facing the blank canvas. Right. Not true with me.
Not for you.
Not at all. It's easy. I'll just start putting stuff on and then see what happens and start the dialogue kind of. The hardest part about making a painting is finishing it.
as we shall see here.
Yeah. So,
no, I mean, because when I look at this, I think this is a potentially finished painting. It's got some white space around it, but the composition itself is interesting. It's dynamic. Good use of colors. I mean,
I totally agree. Yeah. But you know, there was something about it that wasn't satisfying to me. And in a way, seeing these is kind of heartbreaking, right? Because you have you have this nice, fresh thing, but it was I don't know.
Well, when you have something like this, and you think, okay, this is a nice piece. Why don't you just take this canvas off and put a new one up and start? What?
Yeah, I probably should do that more. I mean, I have space limitations. If I had a gigantic studio with lots of storage,
you could potentially do that.
Yeah, I could do that more.
What made you think this is not finished? I want to keep working.
Hard to say at the time, you know, and also, like a lot of times, if I start a painting and I'm totally into it, it's different when I walk away and then come back after a couple of days and say, right away I'll see something like, oh no, this is not working. This section isn't working.
And again, this is intuitive, something based on
it's totally,
decades
it's totally
of
intuitive. You know, like there's trying. For me, making a painting is reconciling opposites. Okay. So, you know, a lot of mine kind of have a watery sort of element to them.
As this one does.
Yeah,
here,
it's got a little bit
version.
of, and water is like almost a perfect analogy for painting, I think, because you're looking at the surface, you're looking at the depth, you're looking at reflections. So it's not just one thing. It's all these things that are so with painting, the second you make a mark on a canvas, there's foreground and background.
Right.
It's the surface and the depth.
Right.
And so it's trying to like balance out those. I want them all to kind of have an equilibrium.
Okay.
So, you know, might see some depth, but then it gets contradicted by another thing that brings it back to the surface. And it's kind of like this game in a way that your eye is doing and going back and forth. And,
yeah. Well, and again, this one, sorry we've lost this one to the layers of paint, because I think this is also a gorgeous version. Now,
yeah, it's getting a little darker.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
so maybe my intention was initially that looks too cheerful.
Okay.
So, you know, and it needs a little more gravitas to
Right,
it, and maybe, you know.
And you sure gave it here. You know,
Yeah,
there's a lot of black. There's a little bit of yellow that's still peeking out.
Yeah, barely.
But not much.
And then it's really getting, you know, kind of murky. And you know, like I was telling you earlier, one benefit of having done this for a long time is I know this is going to happen. I know it's going to start out fresh and beautiful. It's going to go through it's like a child. Right. You know, it's going to go through the
terrible twos.
The terrible twos,
the
and then even worse, it's going to go through the teenage years. Yeah. And then finally, I can bring it to maturity. I hope. And so I've done it enough times to not get totally distraught.
Well, now when you took a picture of this one, did you think this could be it, or were you certain this is not it? This is too dark? Or?
No, and actually, one of the reasons why I took all these photos is, you know, when you're working on a painting, you get so enmeshed in it, it's hard to see again. So that's why I take a lot of breaks, go outside and look at the sky or something, or look at the clouds, and then come back. And I also have mirrors in my studio, so I can look at a mirror and see the reflection of it in the mirror and see it in a new way. But taking a photograph does the same thing too. If I take a photograph of it, then I can look at it on the screen, and it'll.
And were you looking on your computer, your iPad, or something?
Yeah,
like that? Yeah.
And so it'll inform me what it needs.
A different,
perhaps,
yeah, right.
Yes.
Now it's regaining some of its cheerfulness, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, more white and more kind of like one of the problems I might have had with this is it was getting too literal. You know, it's sort of like illustrational of plants or something.
It does look a little bit like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, which is not necessarily bad, but is not what I wanted. Yeah, I like it to be a little less defined.
Okay.
So it can be read either way. But yeah, I was thinking this
might be it.
Very close to finished. So I probably worked on this painting for a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, and you
I
had
was working on other things
were
at the
going
same
on
time.
at
Yeah,
time.
and another thing, you know, I'll turn it to the wall sometimes, so I don't see it for a while, and then
Come back and
when I look at it again, once again, I say, oh, it needs a little of this down here, or, you know, just all back.
So you're trusting your own aesthetics, your own taste.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Yeah. Well, my criteria is I want to make something that I am really interested in living with and looking at as a finished painting. Okay. And so maybe some of those earlier stages didn't do that for me.
Okay.
I'd say, yeah, it's got this bright freshness, but it doesn't have enough.
It doesn't have enough oomph.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot going on in this.
Oh yeah, I for sure thought this was finished here, and I kept that in the studio for a couple months, and at one point I said, nah, it needs a little here and there, and then it just
as we'll see, it got more than a little here and there. So it's just
so you can see some of it's going away, and like that kind of there's kind of like a cocoon thing off on the left-hand side of it. Yeah. That I liked that a lot. I like that shape, and so I was kind of working around that, and then it gets obliterated. And, it's in the finished product. Yeah, so I was thinking this is pretty nice too. This more muted colors. And everything.
Now this is almost unrecognizable from that opening gamut.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
this looks like an entirely different
Yeah,
painting.
I know. And this is not necessarily every painting goes through this.
Right.
Some of them I'm lucky and can finish in, you know,
Less than a year.
yeah, like a few weeks.
Right,
maybe.
right.
One of my favorite painters is Philip Guston,
Sure. Yeah.
who is, you know, getting a lot of acclaim. He's having giant.
He's really having a
shows.
comeback. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's been one of my just
Yeah.
painting gods for,
Yeah.
for years. And he said something about every painting has 20 minutes where it comes together.
Uh-huh.
So if it's the first 20 minutes, the painting is done in 20 minutes.
Right.
If it's sometimes that 20 minutes happens after eight weeks, or it might happen in the middle, and then it informs you of, okay, now I know what direction it's going to go, and I can finish it up.
So it changes here. I'm going to go on to the next. We just have a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure we get all the versions.
Yeah, so there's subtle changes. I guess I felt like it was coming together a bit here and now.
Okay. The reappearance of the yellow in a big way. Now that's kind of it's blurred back a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Reminiscent of a couple versions ago. But
And so the yellow, you know, I thought the yellow would serve better if it was down more lower, or, you know, and I'm applying it thicker, and
this looks
all kinds of.
almost like a floral arrangement to me. Is there any sense? I mean,
Yeah, well, I've been into gardening, and I have a great yard with lots of beautiful plants,
right.
and I have a pond right outside my studio too.
Okay.
So the pond informs. So these are
Somewhere
kind
in
of
that,
like
it's a-
there's lily pads and flowers in there, and fish and turtles, and so it's.
Now here we are. Is this the final version, or is there one more? I think.
Let's see.
There it is.
Yeah, that's the final version.
That's it.
Yeah. No.
I feel like I just ran 100 miles.
Well, in a way, it's kind of embarrassing to show all this, but I thought it might be interesting.
No,
to
but
see
you
like
know,
a-
I think what's kind of amazing is that each one is pretty darn good, you know, so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
even though they go through so many different
Yeah.
versions.
Well, I had a discussion years ago with an artist friend of mine, and like 90% is not good enough.
Right.
You know, because it's pretty darn good.
Right.
But it's like, no, that's not.
Yeah.
That's not my standards.
That's not your standards.
I want it really, really good. You know, again, something I can live with a long time, or if someone purchases the painting and it's in their house.
And you know that they will be able to live with
Yeah,
it for a long
yeah.
time.
And I have come across some of my paintings in people's houses or collections that from years and years ago, and I'm very happy to see that they hold up.
Well, it's a good way for us to finish. I mean, it's been great to talk to you again after 15 years. We
Thanks
got to
for
do
having
it
me.
less than 15 years again, and really amazing to see your work undergo all that stuff. So thank you so much, Hugh.
All right, thank you.
The Creative Community is a co-production of TVSB in Santa Barbara and CAPS Media in Ventura. I'm your host, David Starkey, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.